Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the JC Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are out by the necessary for no particular reason. Today we're doing a Horticulture Hour, which is a program that we do where we open up for questions for a panel of horticulturists. If you have any questions, you are welcome to ask them. We've got Dennis Carey, our curator. We've got Greg Paige, our director of horticulture, and Sophia McCusker, all here who are ready to answer your questions and excited to do so. But we are out by the necessary because the necessary is going to be renovated very soon, and we wanted to give it a nice proper farewell. I lovingly refer to it as the most beautiful bathroom in all of public horticulture. Alexander and I were having a discussion about that. There's maybe arguments to be made against that, but I am sticking to it here and now. From the outside, at least, it's the most dramatic bathroom I've seen in a public garden. And let me tell you, it's going to get a lot more dramatic with the renovations that are coming up. I'm not too familiar with the details of it, but Greg, would you like to talk a little bit about it?
Sure, I know a thing or two. So starting next week, the necessary is going to get a brand spanking new shiny roof. We had a very generous donor donate money to make that happen. So it's going to get a copper roof, and partly the reason for that is it's old. The squirrels have gotten into it, and it's in much need to protect the structure underneath it. So that's going to be happening starting next week. Prior to that, to make that happen, we're going to be cleaning up some plants around the sides and the back of it to make room for that construction to happen. Once that's complete, and in the not too distant future, the inside's going to get a bit of a redo, much more needed than the outside, I think. And there are plans to make an ADA accessible ramp to get up to it, and new hardscaping and pavers for that. So big changes on that are going to happen throughout the winter, probably 5 to 6 weeks to get the roof off and a new one put on. And then the other stuff will follow after that. So keep your eyes peeled when you come visit us to watch those changes happen.
And by no stretch of the imagination do I condone vandalizing public spaces, but the quotes written on the wall in the bathroom of the necessary, they're actually pretty good.
They're pretty appropriate.
They're pretty appropriate. They're very wholesome, very
Yes.
nice, very inspiring. They make you
Yes.
feel safe and comfortable. And they're going to go away, but yeah, you have the opportunity to do a little bathroom reading before they go away. Okie dokie. And so that is enough announcements for today. So I think we can go ahead and get started with our horticulture hour. And like I said, this is a Q&A session. And if any of you have any questions, we would be more than happy to entertain those questions. Absolutely. And funnily enough, we don't have any in the chat right now. So,
What?
Hey, maybe Greg, would you maybe show us which specifically trees are going to be coming out with the renovation maybe?
Sure. We are very good about planting things close together when we first plant things. I've been guilty of it my whole life. And surprise, surprise, things grow quickly and get really close together. So even if we weren't working on this, we're kind of due to do a little bit of lightening just for the betterment of the structure itself and not making it look so crowded. So there's an older magnolia that's planted out in front that is a relatively easy to get cultivar. Those were some of the decisions that we made also, so that we're not just randomly cutting things down. We think long and hard about that when we take things out of the garden. And this was no difference in deciding this. There are some cryptomerias on the side. I think there's one called Ben Franklin that we have in other spots of the garden. That one's super close, so he's coming out also. And there is a very large, not so little gem magnolia in the back. That's actually a pretty good staircase for squirrels to get in and out of the structure. And that guy's gonna come out as well. And that's gonna allow the folks that are working on it to get around it safely, and also give us the opportunity to take out some things that we need to and add some new things back, because we have one or two things down in the nursery that would work well up in this part of the garden. We're tucked into the magnolia collection up here, one that's near and dear to me. And there's a lot of nice magnolias in the nursery that we'd like to get out and add to the collection. So lots of behind the scenes stuff always with things that we do here. And it's something to keep your eye on as the landscape kind of changes around. It gives us the opportunity to add some new things and recharge the landscape, so to speak.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Greg. Okay, so Diane has given us a question, and this will be a fun one to sort of contemplate and philosophize over. She asks, will ivy growing up in trees harm them?
There's a couple things there. If you're talking about English ivy, it's an invasive weed, so it perpetuates it and makes it seed and spread around more. The attachment doesn't harm the tree per se. The weight and the moisture that it holds against the trunk is detrimental, but more the weight. So if that gets a snow load on it or ice, it can damage limbs. I've seen trees that have been pulled down that had a lot of ivy that went up, not just on the trunk, but into the canopy itself, and it adds a lot of extra weight to the tree. A lot of people think that the ivy is feeding off the tree, but that's not the case. It fixes itself to hold on to it. It's that moisture that it holds, and it's the weight that it adds to the tree. It's pretty easy to take that off, is to prune around the base of it. Something else that I've seen that just popped in my head, a lot of that ivy around the root flare of a tree is a good place for voles and mice to hide. And I've seen large trees that have been girdled because they can feed protected by that layer of evergreen protection. And if you've got snow on top of that in the wintertime, it makes a nice home for something to do a lot of damage on your tree. So all good reasons to take off English ivy if you have them growing on large trees.
That and when an ivy gets tall enough, it becomes reproductive.
Yep.
So you want to get it out of your trees, because once it gets a certain number, 10, 20, 30 meters up, and that's when it wants to make babies. So cutting that ivy out of the trees helps prevent that, stops the spread.
Okie dokie. All righty. So Patty has just come in with a question. She says, could you please give some advice on properly taking care of osmanthus fragrans? You have an incredible collection of it, bigger than any other place I've seen. How do you ensure they thrive? What are some of the key things we should do, especially in spring?
It's pretty easy. It's a pretty trouble-free plant. It's, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's the more cold hardy one? Or is it the one that's kind of finicky with cold weather?
Fragrance is good around here.
Yeah,
I don't know how far up it can go.
Yeah, I don't know the top limit, but I like it as an alternative to like a holly or something.
It's a good screen. It's a good hedge. Planting at the right depth, mulching it with good organic matter. That's pretty much all you really need to do. You don't want to plant it somewhere where it's going to be in really compacted soil.
It's going to want some sun.
It's going to want some sun to produce the flowers that have the nice fragrance, and for it to be kind of full. But it's always one of those plants that with that minimum cultural care, you plant it and kind of walk away from it.
It's kind of easy, yeah. Just, cut the branches that are crossing, or if there's any broken or dead, get rid of those. But
the basic stuff.
Yeah, basic stuff you do to anything else.
I've found when I planted them that I would find them fairly small and they can take a year or two to establish.
Yeah.
But once they establish, they go. So
they go pretty quick.
It's not going to be planting like something that's faster growing, but I think that's
like a leyland, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does take them a year or two to get established, and then they're pretty carefree. You can fertilize if you want to, but you really don't need to if it's getting organic matter. But a pretty trouble-free, evergreen, very fragrant screen to use in landscapes.
Yeah. All righty. So Diane has another question for us. In the beginning of it, it just sounds like a poem. She says, a fence separates a weedy field from a cultivated garden. Okay, but how best to prevent the weeds from coming into the garden? What about mulching along the fence with composted wood chips?
That's definitely something you can do. Having that physical barrier, and when weeds come up, they're easier to deal with in that situation than they are mixed in with other plants. I always heard, and you can speak to this, one of the reasons that Tony planted that screen around juniper level was to keep the deer out and to keep weeds out. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but when you have something that fills in really quickly, it's going to keep things from, casually coming through, but birds are going to drop seeds.
Yeah, it was also privacy, but yeah, the wind will blow in tons and tons of seed, and so any kind of hedge or fence or whatever that can interrupt that will stop that from happening, or at least not stop it, reduce it.
Yeah.
There's no stopping it. Back in my Plant Delights days, he had a spot where, because of how the hedges were planting, all the wind was funneled to this one spot, and that's where year after year, that's where the most weeds were, because they kept getting blown in, funneled to this one spot, and then they drop down and germinate.
I think it depends on what kind of weeds it is too. If it's something that spreads, a barrier might be a good idea. Just a path so that you can see, if it's like rhizome spreading, but really keeping them down before they go to seed is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And there's it's going to be a couple years, but it takes time. But keeping on it and getting the stuff in the garden before it goes to seed.
And it's amazing the stuff that birds bring into a garden just by dropping things in hedgerows, poison ivy and porcelain berry and bittersweet and a bazillion other things. Those are a lot of the things that you see. Pokeweed, they're the worst for spreading pokeweed around. So maybe doing something to deter the birds. I'm just kidding. But that's
native, isn't it?
Pokeweed is native, but I've actually seen that for sale in garden centers in England.
Oh wow!
There's Tony has a variegated one that he sells from time to time.
Yeah. But that's probably the biggest offender. It's hard to control the wind, and it's hard to control animals spreading things around. It's the perils of being a gardener in the South. It's something that's never gonna go away.
For sure.
Yeah, and certainly mulch is an extremely good way. Keep the light off the seeds, and
make sure you get a clean mulch.
Yeah.
Make sure you're getting it from somewhere that's not going to have weed seeds in it.
Definitely,
for sure.
We run into that quite a bit.
And if this is a neighbor's field, it might not be a bad idea to go talk to the neighbor, let them know your concerns about weeds spreading into the garden, and then maybe see what you can do to help them deal with it. Like they might be interested in putting out a cover crop to make sure that they're suppressing weeds in their land so that you aren't getting weeds in yours. They might be on board with that idea. They just might not know that it's something they can do. So it may not hurt to go say hi to your neighbors and see what's up with them.
Or even just mowing a strip that they mow down between the properties that would form a little bit of a break, but a lot's gonna end up over there anyway.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt. Okie dokie. So Arlene's asking, can Magnolia Little Gem be hat racked? If so, what time of year would be best?
Magnolias can take pretty harsh pruning.
First off, would you explain to everybody what hat racking is?
Hat racking is pruning something back just to stubs. It's pretty close. It's a cross between pollarding, which is pruning back to one spot every year, and topping that we see quite a bit. It's a pretty drastic pruning measure, and it gets the name hat rack because it looks like you could hang your hat on the branches that are sticking out. You don't see that done a lot with magnolia. You can severely cut them back. Holly responds much better to being hat racked, cut back to where you have little to no foliage. I wouldn't do that to a magnolia. I would cut it back pretty severely if you're wanting to keep it contained into a situation. It's not something we prescribe doing, putting the right plant in the right place. But if you have to do something like that, southern magnolia can be pruned back really harshly. I don't think I would call it hat racking. You need to have some foliage on it to help rejuvenate and to come back from the stress and the strain of that. My good friend and magnolia colleague Kevin Paris down in Spartanburg has done a lot of that stuff with magnolias in controlled landscapes to great effect, but not hat rack, but just prune back really, really hard. They can take it.
Okie dokie. So while we wait for a few more questions to come in, a thought occurred to me, and yes, the cobbler's son has no shoes. This is for sure. But so like Sophia, I personally don't know anything about like your personal gardening habits. Like I know you take care of the nursery and you do an amazing job, but what kind of plants do you have? Like, do you keep house plants? Do you
So
have a
cold out
garden?
right now? A little uncomfortable.
and like I said, the converse, if you don't take care of plants in your personal life because you're too busy taking care of all the plants here, like, thank you for your sacrifice. Like, really, like if that's the case, then lovely. But like, do you keep plants at home?
Yeah, no, I have a decent collection of house plants. When I was in school a few years ago, I would take anything that anyone would give to me, but I've gotten a little bit more selective, and so now I keep just things that are really interesting. I don't have a ton right now, but I really like Rex begonias.
Yeah.
And then I have a really nice yard. Part of the reason we bought our house 5 years ago, and one of my big things was I really wanted a nice piece of property. Like I wanted something that I could garden in. And life has happened, and so I've been paring back my my goals for it. So this year my goal was to keep my containers on my front porch alive. I have a bed in the front yard, and I've gotten sometimes I end up with plants sometimes in my car. I don't know where they come from.
It happens.
But I'll tuck things in, and it's really been you either take the abuse or you die at my house.
Tough love garden.
Tough love garden is what I've got right now. My backyard's a hot mess express, but
Have you ever tried growing any vegetables or anything like that?
I do, and they generally die.
Yeah. That happens.
It happens. I get real excited.
Yeah.
I'm hoping my son he'll be 3 in January, and I'm really hoping that next year we can do some more that he can help with, because he loves to get out and help.
For sure.
He loves to, if I get the hose out, that kid wants the hose.
Yeah. I'm fairly convinced that the more excited you are about a particular vegetable you're growing, the sooner it's going to die.
The only thing I planted this year were tomatoes and peppers, and I didn't get a tomato until I think the end of August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was
sure.
Terrible. But that's what I keep. I have plants at home. Sometimes they're terribly neglected. Right now they look pretty good.
Awesome. Well, I know Greg's moving house right now, so he's in a bit of a renovation of his gardening stuff. So
We've got a pretty small yard. It's kind of a blank canvas, and I've got some ideas on what I want to do. We also have a new dog in the house, so I got a plan on how she's going to interact with things. But I've never had success with vegetables or things you eat.
Yeah.
I've killed tons of those things. Every once in a while, I'll go crazy with containers, and then realize how much work it takes when you get home. It's
so much watering.
It's so much watering, and you've been doing that all day long.
Yeah.
It's definitely the cobbler or the house painter's house.
Yeah.
I've got a pretty nice garden in Charlotte that's gone completely to pot. Speaking of hot mess express, and I'm trying to get a former work friend of mine to go over there and work his wonderful magic, so that I don't wake up in the middle of the night feeling guilty about that. But once we get our legs underneath us where we are, I'm still getting my legs underneath me here, to some success and some failure. And once all that happens, I would love to do something.
He's trying to put plants in Greg's car, and he will not take them.
Eventually, I'm just going to take all of them. I'm going to take all of them. I've got my eye on lots of things here.
Walking through the nursery, he's like, I'd really like that for my yard.
Nice. That's nice. Ooh, look at those. So
we got an extra one, Greg.
I'm hoping to do some of that stuff. And this is such a great part of the world with nurseries and garden friends and pass along plants. And it would be horrible if I didn't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll do that.
Great. And I saw the front yard of Dennis's garden when I went over to his house for a movie night, staff movie night. We watched Alien. It was a lot of fun. And he has a very beautiful Lagerstromia farii fantasy in his front yard, which is great. But I didn't get to see anything else you have, Dennis. What kind of plants do you grow?
I have a postage stamp yard, about 1/6 of an acre, 3,000 square feet of garden space, which is smaller than a lot of people's houses these days.
Yeah.
And I've been in that house for more than 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Original owner, and it was one of these things. It was a farm before it was a neighborhood, so I inherited an empty space that the builder put in 1 maple and 8 holly, Japanese hollies, and some grass seed. And then, so everything else I've done over 25 years. I'm one of those gardeners, and a lot of our audience is going to be this way, where you garden you buy the plant first, and then you get home and you're like, okay, now where do I put it? Yeah. And then so you're looking for holes of something that's finally died that you can, I'm sad to see it go, but I'm glad it's dead because now I have room for this other thing. So my garden's a mishmash. And like these two, I don't do a lot of watering in my own garden. So my plants have to be tough and survive. I don't baby anything, so I've lost quite a few plants. But I have a small veggie garden that mostly my wife tends. It's also doubles as my compost pile. I have some pallets built into a box,
Sure.
And then I put all my yard waste in, and then every spring or summer when I build the summer veggie garden, I throw some compost on top of it, or some manure on top of it, and plant some summer veggies in it, so it serves double duty space-wise. And we had pretty good crop of tomatoes this year. We picked a little grape cultivar that was really sweet, and we got tons of it in our, it's 8 square feet or whatever 2 pallets wide and 1 pallet deep equals.
Perfectly documented,
Huh?
right? It's perfectly documented.
No, it's not. I do have a spreadsheet at home. It's just a Google Doc sheet. It's nothing fancy like we have here. And I do an annual inventory of my garden. But like if I buy a plant and stick it in the ground, it might be 6 months before it gets onto the spreadsheet.
Fair enough. Well, you keep all our records here up to date. So yeah. And Penelope put in a wonderful comment here that JC himself didn't have a home garden. The Arboretum was his garden. And why not? It's a great place. And actually it's all our garden. This is a public garden, and we're open to the public every day of the year for free. Like, enjoy it. This belongs to you. Come and be here and bask in all its splendor. Okay, so we got a question from Jennifer. It says, landscaping question regarding dogs. Got 2 new young active dogs in the past year. They created massive mud patches through the backyard. I put wood shavings down to prevent all of the mud from ending up in the house. Now there are just massive stretches with no green. I'm not excited about more grass, but is sod my only real option? How long would the dogs have to stay off of sod for it to take root? Is there anything else I could plant or seed that would take the same or similar amount of time? Isn't there like a strip over by the geophyte border that has grass on it that you have lots of consternation about, like what you're going to be doing that?
I look at that every day and I think, ugh. And then I think, what could we do there that's different, that's going to take the traffic? I don't think any grass species can take that many in our situation. And the question from the viewer, it's if you want grass, sod's probably going to be the best thing to do, because you're not going to be able to get seed established unless you keep the dogs off of it until it's kind of up and running. So I would do like a warm season grass that's going to take a little bit more of the traffic from the dogs, and just kind of see what happens. Mark and I did one of these with how to garden with dogs, and that's always a concern, is them trampling the grass or them ruining it with urine or playing or whatever. And it's just when you garden with dogs, that to me is more of our priority than having a nice green lawn. So I would, if you want the grass, I would try sod. I would keep them off of it for, if you put it down in the spring and they develop a good root system, 3 or 4 weeks should be enough time for them to get out and do their thing. But inevitably they may wear it out too, and hopefully maybe it's just that puppy energy. And once they get a little bit more well-behaved, keeping them out of the beds is a whole different thing. And you can do that with fencing, as we mentioned. And I encourage you to go back and look at the one that Mark and I did. We had lots of good ideas there that kind of encompassed a lot of having dogs in your life and having a yard that stayed green and active.
There are some. So yes, if you want grass and you want it green, sod is probably
It's going to have a
option.
root system started. It's going to already be established and dense, and it's going to grow quicker.
And
than
it will
seed.
it will if they do run. And I will say with the sod, there's pros and cons of sod. I don't love it, but the pros of it are that the warm season grasses that will take that abuse and then regenerate, the sod varieties won't reseed. So that's a pro to them. You could try, if you want to just experiment. I know you said you weren't married to grass, so if you want to do experiment, you won't be able to do. It's too late to put down warm season sod right now.
Yeah.
You could try some seed mixes if you. It would be an experiment, and they're probably just going to be trampled. But if you wanted to try some of the lawn alternative seed mixes, just to see if anything lives through the winter, like if you're up for experimenting, I've seen those. I haven't used them, so I don't know exactly how much they are, or how well they're going to work. But it seems like if you can get one thing to take hold, some might call them weeds, but that's what my lawn is.
I would steer. We did a lot of walking over Thanksgiving in my neighborhood and saw a lot of artificial turf, and that's all well and good, and it's bomb-proof and it's green, but it's not a very good thing for the environment. It reflects a lot of heat. It doesn't allow water to percolate through. There's no organic exchange in there at all. It gets super hot in the summertime. And it's just not a good thing for the environment. It wears out. You have to replace it, and then it goes into the landfill. But it's shocking to see how many people are turning over. You see a lot of small yards and new landscapes where there's a little patch of fake green grass, and it looks good going by. But all those things go through my head when I see that kind of stuff.
I've had dogs in that garden for 25 years, and they different ones, and they all kind of have their own personalities and do something different kinds of damage in the garden, but they will tend to choose to run or walk as a particular path. In my yard, it's usually right around the perimeter of the fence or certain areas, so you can kind of maybe design around that too by planting things that are a little bit high, like some liriope or something to block the view of the area that they're going to walk on and kill. And then you can just block that view, and then they can walk through it. And I have a little dog right now, and he loves walking through the leafy things that are just over his height, and you can just see his little tail going through the garden. He doesn't trample the plants anymore. He's kind of old though, but he has this one path that he always takes, and then he doesn't really bother the taller things around it. So that's an option too, is using your dog's patterns is part of your design, and it is their garden as much as it is yours. So you can't get too mad at them for being a dog.
And that was the overriding message with the talk that Mark and I did, is you have to work with them, and there really aren't bad dogs. There's bad dog owners, and there's lots of things you can do to kind of, find those paths and work with them. Our new yard, there's a little bed that we're going to put in. And it's a spot that our dog goes to look down the street. So I'm not going to plant anything there. Right. I'm going to leave that open so that she's got that viewpoint, and just kind of work with those sorts of things.
Yeah. My dog Alexander is making a digging
the diggers
symbol. Yeah, my dog right now is digging. He likes to eat the Japanese beetle grubs that are overwintering in the turf, feeding on the turf roots. So he'll dig 50 to 100 holes that are about this deep and this wide throughout the course of the winter. And he'll get those grubs and chew them like little chicken nuggets. They must be delicious because he's so adamant about it. But and that is something I can't can't control. I can't garden around either.
Well, I mean, hey, he's aerating your lawn for
Yeah.
He's aerating your lawn,
He is aerating your
and
lawn.
he's reducing the number of Japanese bees.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Integrated
for
pest
sure.
management.
So
at
why are
work.
you even complaining?
Well, no, I'm just saying
Like, I don't
it's just
understand.
part of living with a
You're gonna
dog.
break your ankle? It's fine.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want a Japanese
No,
bee?
so what I do, my backyard turf is just Bermuda grass anyway.
Mm.
So I'm just filling these holes with gravel, and this Bermuda grass just weaves itself over top of it, and you don't even notice it
Yeah.
by July. That you know.
Sure. And speaking of gravel, thought occurred to me while y'all were discussing this question, like maybe hardscaping is an answer, like a stone path, like in a Japanese garden, or like a kind of like a tiny crevice garden, like if you were to get like a brick path with spacing between it so that it's still permeable to water, there will be little things that pop up in between, and like because of the stone there, that'll take pressure off. It won't be compacting soil as much. You'll get some interest, but like with the stone, it'll be pretty, and then with whatever grass you can get growing between it, it could be something. So if you want to spend a ridiculous amount of money on this, that's also an option for you.
Well, I think that the question said like 2 strips. Like
Yeah.
maybe it's an opportunity to like have a mulch path. I mean, I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know what the property looks like.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
like echoing what they said about designing around the habits, like maybe that's where your path needs to be, and just
Mhm.
Yeah.
make it a wood chip or path, or
Honestly.
a ton of money on bricks.
For sure.
Clingstone.
Brilliant. Okay, Luann asked a question. Well, she says, I planted 1 Japanese anemone and now there are many of them. What is the best time/way to transplant these elsewhere and to give to some friends?
Tim?
Oh. Tim's in Argentina right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
So
Trying to remember
they can be
what to do.
divided now.
Yeah.
Things are, if it's a perennial, this is a great time of year to divide because the ground's never going to get so cold that you can't get a plant out and
Sure.
divide it and get it back in the ground. They're not going to require a whole ton of water right now either, so they have time to knit in before they get water stressed again. So yeah, late fall, winter, very early spring, and that's a general rule for all those, whether it's a fall blooming or a spring blooming plant or whatever.
Great. And a follow-up question to that, Luann's asking, by divide, what exactly do you mean? Please tell us about division and this wonderful phenomenon which
Okay.
allows us to acquire many, many plants.
Plants like anemone and a lot of plants, they will produce on little structures called rhizomes or stolons, little clones of themselves, and they can either grow as a clump and become a big fat clump. Think like an old liriope or something, or an old iris or something, and you can dig the whole thing out of the ground and carefully shake off the dirt and carefully tease apart or sometimes cut apart the pieces, and you'll end up with clumps that are fans of leaves coming out of a definite growing point, and you'll have you can divide a full plant 2, 3 times, 4 times. If you're really greedy, you can divide it a lot more than that, but you generally have less survival if you over divide. So be conservative there, and then and plant them right back. Fall is the time of year I usually divide in my garden at home, but it was so dry all of September and October that like I said, I don't water much, so my ground was hard as rock, and I didn't want to put plants back into some dry situations. So I didn't do any dividing this fall, but
Yeah, you said be gentle. Most plants want to survive, so if you've got the crown, you're good to go.
Yeah.
It's gonna feel brutal. You don't have, as long like on the irises. There are pictures online. Like extension's probably a good resource for some diagrams of what the plantlets look like. But if you have the growing pieces, like in an iris bulb, you might come out with an iris rhizome this long, but you just need a node this big, or you need a piece of the rhizome with a couple nodes.
And you don't always have to be gentle.
No.
Daylilies, liriope, things like that. Take
Irises,
a shovel,
Yeah.
jam
Hack
it
them
down like a guillotine, cut the plant into 2 or 3 pieces, pry one up and plant it somewhere else.
And
And some
another
hostas too. Can be.
Yeah.
another thing to think about with that too is when you do divide, that's stimulating growth. Like the plant it's sending the message to the plant that it's
Needs
being
to produce
damaged,
roots.
and it will produce roots. And like, yeah, this is definitely a good time of year to do it. You can plant, unless we start getting some brutal temperatures.
It's going to warm back up next week. So, and
Yeah.
we've had a lot of moisture right now. So right now is a good time to do some of that and spread them around your garden or give them to your friends.
Yeah, that couple inches of rain we got last week
Yeah.
it's a perfect time to do that. But if we get into another really long dry spell, maybe hold off.
Okie dokie. Sandy is asking for any winter maintenance hacks or something unexpectedly helpful or fun you've found or started doing in the winter garden over the years besides staying inside.
I mean, mulching this time of year is good. You can do some structural pruning this time of the year because you can see the whole structure of trees and shrubs. It's a good time of the year to divide things. It's a good time of the year to kind of edit the garden if you've got things too close, like we talked about with the necessary. It's a good time to do that sort of thing. It's a really good time to plot and plan what you want to do out in your yards, looking at garden catalogs inside, going outside and laying out beds and kind of thinking about those sorts of things.
Yeah, with everything dormant, you have more of a view of the bones of the garden, and you can make those decisions on the ground. You can also look up into your trees, and whereas you might not see what needs to be pruned when they're in leaf, if it's a deciduous tree, when they're not in leaf, you can see a branch that's too close or a crossing or growing the wrong way for that you don't want it, and make those decisions there.
It's a good time to do crepe myrtle pruning. Just go in and look for, and thin them out a little bit, and you can see the entire structure. So you can really go in and be selective and thoughtful about how you want that tree to look.
In the vein of the question says, what are some hacks?
Yeah.
There's one that I actually learned from Chris Glenn here years ago. I do it now and it works really well. Hellebores hybridus, the older foliage can look ratty. It's an evergreen, and so you can have nice new growth on top of really ugly old growth. And some people go in and they individually will prune out those ugly leaves. December is a good time of year just to go and cut all of your hellebore hybridus. Chris Glenn does it with a lawnmower. I go with pruners.
Yeah.
And just cut them to the ground, and you'll get fresh new foliage and flowers, and it's great. And you can see the flowers better, and you don't have that ugly foliage.
We did that at Pine Knot Farms in January, pretty much right before the open house. We'd go through all the pots and take out all of last year's leaves because they don't need last year's leaves anymore. They're going to do a whole new flush of growth. And then with all the leaves out of the way, you can see the flowers a heck of a lot better. And that's always one of the major criticisms of hellebores is that their flowers are hanging down and you can't really see them as much. But like you get those old leaves out of the way, they're right there and they're right in your face and super beautiful.
So that's a nice hack that I've started doing within the last 5 years or so, and it works really well.
Sure. What popped into my mind with hacks for winter maintenance was with regards to container gardening, specifically keeping. So I grow bonsai trees. Yeah, I grow temperate trees in containers outside all winter. I do not move them into overwintering structures. Like I have to be actively mindful of what the weather is all throughout winter. Like, is it cold enough, or is there enough moisture in the pot? How cold is it going to get? Do I need to move it? And that kind of thing. And the hack that I'm getting to is just like before. So last night it got down in Fahrenheit. How cold
22.
did it? It got down to 22 last night, and I watered everything when I got home in preparation for that 22, because water, by virtue of the fact that it is liquid, is possessed of energy. And when the water freezes, that energy is released and it's there in and amongst the plants. So like watering before a really big freeze is a great way to make sure your plants survive through the freeze. It's not like the silver bullet, but it's certainly, it's like a chromium bullet. How about that?
Anything that's water stressed, if it's dry, is some mystical thing
Right.
with water.
And it is
It's
mystical.
just
And
magical.
they
So-
did teach us like the physiology of it and
Yeah.
plant physiology, and I cannot for the life of me remember why or how, but just remember, don't let it freeze dry. If it's wet when it freezes, it stands a much better chance of making it through. And yeah. Okie dokie. Let's see what other questions we got. Okay. Jennifer says, I attended your talk on garden tools. Can you remind me of the brand of pruners and other tools you mentioned for which every part is replaceable? Looking to round out my Christmas wish list. So in that theme, what is a favorite garden themed holiday gift you've received or given?
I'm gonna bring up the two favorite pruners. And I have mine
Hold
right
on, I'll
here.
get mine out.
I didn't bring mine.
I got.
Jeez.
I
Mine are
like
at
to.
home.
I like to double wrap. I got the Felco holster.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
So the
the
brand is
Tatsumi.
Felco.
Yeah.
Felco.
Felco is the brand. Everything on here is replaceable. They're relatively easy to find now. Most garden centers carry them. I was at Logan's this weekend and they have them, and lots of other places do too. They're easy to sharp. They're easy to maintain. They have a variety of sheaths. I like this one because I can clip it to my belt or my pants. This is good because you can loop your belt through it, or if you don't want to clip it, that fits right into your back pocket really
Fits
easy.
really well into the pocket.
The others are, these are Okatsunis. These are made in Japan. The Japanese pretty much make everything better, efficient, really good metal. These last forever. They're easy to sharp, they're easy to clean, and there's something cathartic about pruning with these and then clicking that when
I think
you're done with them.
You're doing it wrong. It's more like that.
Yeah, on your leg.
Yeah. You got
They
it.
come in a couple of different sizes, so that's a good size for in a greenhouse
This
or
is
for
the-
roses.
This is the smaller size, and I feel like it fits in my hand better.
Yep.
If you've got slightly smaller hands than these are like a little bit heavier.
Yep.
Just
Felcos come in multiple sizes as well, including left-handed and right-handed
And
models.
these, I'm left-handed, and the number 9s are for left-handed folk, and they hold up well. If you have these, I encourage you to get a pair of those too, just to change, just to have a different hand posture when you're pruning, which is always a good thing. Those are the pruners. There's a whole multitude of other gardening tools. There's a garden wholesaler called Am Leonard that has a great online catalog. Any kind of tool you can think of, that's a place that I would recommend you go and kind of look at things for.
I can't remember what it's called. I got a tool that I really loved. There's
The Haris, the soil
The
knives. That's a
Haris.
great tool to
Yeah.
have, and a
Folding
good Christmas
saw.
gift. Folding saws are good.
I think it's called a snake, or it's like
the
a
weed
hook,
cobra.
a cobra. Yeah.
Weed cobra.
The
Yeah.
weed cobras. I don't use them as much here. 'cause
Ergonomic hand weeders are good so that you're not putting your wrists in really weird situations. You might remember the name of it. I'm drawing a blank. There's a Niwaki. Is that
Niwaki.
Niwaki?
Yeah, that's the Japanese word for garden tree.
It's an online. They used to only be in Japan, and they went to England, and I think there's in Los Angeles now. They have an online catalog that is really cool to look at if you're a garden file or a plant nerd. Garden rate priced things to exorbitant expensive tools, but really neat, well-built things to kind of look at. We could talk for hours
Talk
about
some hours.
gear and
I'm thinking
clothing.
about I'm thinking about clothing,
Me too.
and I'm wearing a pair of Carhartt bibs, and man,
Ooh.
they feel like
it's like a warm hug.
They seem excessive, but they keep you dry, so you're not getting wet. You can bend on the ground, like if it's
They've
damp
got
out.
Reinforced knees so that it doesn't wear out.
So, like, if you're trying to do work outside in the winter and you're finding yourself really cold all the time, a pair of coveralls are like lifesavers.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, Sophia, do you have a model number or name of the smaller gripped?
I think they're just like small. I don't think.
Yeah.
There's just like small and regular.
Small and regular.
Yeah, I've seen 2 sizes.
Okay.
And these are definitely like they're labeled petite or small.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely.
I think I got mine from Amazon
Okay.
because
Definitely.
they were there.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can get Felcos, like you said, anywhere, Amazon or, but I know that like in town, Logan's has every make and model,
Yep.
left and right.
They might have those too. I'm not sure. These are a little bit harder to find
Yeah, I
retail
don't know if
wise.
I've seen those. I've not noticed those anywhere, but Garden Supply Company in Carey is also good. I don't know if they have. I'm sure they have something.
Okay, and another tool question. Marilyn's asking, what is the name and brand of that tool you've demoed that will pull out tree and shrub seedlings or saplings that are too well rooted to pull by hand?
It's called a weed wrench.
Weed wrench.
Doug had one, and that you can use them for pulling out weed trees. And they come, I've seen small ones so that if you're working on your hands and knees, you can pull things, medium and great big ones. We pull rebar out of the ground with them. You can pull like the metal stakes for fencing out of the ground without wrenching your back. They're great for that. When I worked in Philadelphia, we had a whole crew in the wintertime that pulled invasive weeds out of the woods in the Arboretum, Norway maples and other things. And we had a whole army of those things. And it made that work really, really easy because it pulls the whole root system right out of the ground.
For
I
sure.
have a very prolific ash tree in our neighbor's yard, and they get about 100 ash seedlings. And if you don't get them in time,
Yeah.
they're a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they
But
would work great for
we came-
that.
A friend of mine brought theirs over, and we got through a whole bed of them in
No time.
no time. Didn't even feel like you were working.
For
Chef
sure.
recommends.
Definitely, yeah. I got to use one of those for a creek cleanup day out in Durham one time, and
Yep.
it's just like, wow, this isn't even fair.
Yeah,
Very, very heavy.
we can
they
pull
work.
everything.
Yeah. Do you have a brand name for the weed wrench?
I don't think there's a brand. I
Sure.
know.
I think I think it's Tree Wrench.
Okay.
Maybe.
I think Tree Wrench is the brand.
Sure.
It's something silly simple.
I know that A.M. Leonard that I mentioned carries them.
Mm.
All the different sizes.
Okie dokie. Well, we are quickly approaching the end of our hour time, and it looks like the questions are pretty well dry right now. So I think we can go ahead and call this one. I think this has been a successful, enjoyable horticulture hour.
I
So
think we need to go do some cardio to get warmed up.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
never
We'll
a bad idea.
double time it
Do a
back.
push-up contest.
For
go.
I
sure.
think you're going to win that
Jumping
one.
jacks?
Yeah, I'll maybe pass on the push-up contest,
Me-
but
me
you
too.
guys knock yourselves out.
Jumping jacks?
Okay, well, thank you, all of you, for joining us, Sophia, Greg, and Dennis. It was great for you to share your expertise with everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this Horticulture Hour. We greatly appreciate your questions and participation. We will be back with the with the midweek program. We'll be back next Wednesday at 3 o'clock with the midweek program. We will be doing December gardening tasks. And for those of you catching the recording of this presentation, we do the midweek program live at 3 o'clock every Wednesday. So we are always here. You are always welcome to join us, and we are always grateful to have you. So be sure to stop by and join us sometime. We will see you all then. Y'all take care.